I'm Tina Stewart. I'm the library director at the Wilmington Memorial Library. I'd like to welcome all of you to our program tonight called Sports in Wilmington, 1930s to 1960s. I have a few acknowledgments and announcements to make before we introduce our speakers tonight. First, I want to thank Gerry O'Reilly for putting together this program. Gerry gets credit for the idea for a program about the history of sports in Wilmington, and really, he gets all the credit for putting it together and contacting the speakers who you're going to hear in a few minutes. I also think this is a great opportunity for you to learn not only a little bit about the era in which they played, but a little bit more about the history of our town during that time. So I think we'll all learn a little bit more about the town of Wilmington through tonight's program. I want to thank the Friends of the Library for the refreshments tonight. And thank you to Sandra Curtin and Dick Rinder, who are taping this for WCTV. And we'll have a copy at the library, so if anyone who's missed it will be able to hear the stories that you're going to hear tonight. The library has a really great roster of upcoming programs this spring, and there's a copy on the refreshment table, so please take one. And if you want to be sure not to miss any of the upcoming programs, you could sign up for our email newsletter. There's a form on the table in the back, or you can go to our website, www.wilmlibrary.org, and sign up to receive the weekly online newsletter. The first speaker that I have the pleasure of introducing is someone who is really dedicated to preserving and promoting the history of Wilmington, the chairman of the Historical Commission, Carolyn Harris.
Thank you and good evening. On behalf of the Wilmington Historical Commission, it's my pleasure to welcome you here this evening for a walk down memory lane with some of the finest athletes and coaches that Wilmington sports has produced. As a graduate of Wilmington High School, I was in the stands cheering for many of you, that's for sure. Truly, you are legends of the fields and the courts of our alma mater. Tonight's program is a continuation of the efforts of the Wilmington Historical Commission to record Wilmington's rich history for posterity. I wish to thank Tina Stewart, the Wilmington Memorial Library staff, the Friends of the Library for collaboration in the support of many historical programs. I think everyone in this room knows the one person responsible for tonight's program, and that is Mr. Gerry O'Reilly. I prefer to think of him as Mr. Wilmington. Again, on behalf of the Wilmington Historical Commission, we can't thank Gerry enough. He has always been our go-to person. If we discussed and wanted to do a specific program, we'd always call Gerry. If Gerry had in his mind a program as tonight's program, he always contacted the Historical Commission. It has always been Gerry, first and foremost. Times gone by in apple pie, the round table discussions that we collaborated with the Friends of the Library. It was Gerry that made the calls and rounded up people. The World War II Veterans Program, the Vietnam Veterans Program, lectures at the Wilmington Town Museum, and of course his many publications of his beloved Silver Lake history and Wilmington history in general. Gerry knows everyone, and he has a way, that soft-talking, arm-twisting way of bringing people together, as evident this evening. So at this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Wilmington, Gerry O'Reilly.
Good evening. One of the first things I like to say is that I think the Wilmington High School football team, the basketball teams, and the hockey teams this year will be pretty happy 40 or 50 years from now at the season they had. And if you saw them play, they were unbelievable. Right? What I'm going to talk about tonight is the ball fields of my youth. And there weren't enough. We had so many ball fields, it was unbelievable. We had more ball fields than the town has now for school fields. The first field I remember playing on was at the Lake School, and it's where I hit my first home run. And it was the field was in the foundation of the old ice house, and it was about 100 feet by 50 feet with a 2-foot red brick wall around it. And I hit a ground ball up the middle It bounced over the wall, and I was home. Another ball field that we used was at the end of Grove Avenue, between Grove Ave and the railroad tracks. But you had to get there at the right time. If you didn't get there at the right time, the big guys were there, Gilligans and the Stewarts and the Wandells, and they'd say goodbye. So they'd kick us out, so we'd have to go somewhere else. And another place we went to was Benson Field, and just right around the corner from there, just off of South Street at the corner of Lake, it's now Benson Park. From there, we could go over to the Row of Pines, which is in the woods between South Street and Nickel Street. If you're familiar with the Ohio, Rhode Island area today, that's where it was, and it was an old playground. And from there, we could go down to Atkins Grove. And Atkins Grove was a dance hall on the river. And they had a ball field behind the dance hall, but there was a smaller ball field on Brown Street at the corner of Brown and Nichols, and we played there. If we couldn't get there, we'd go down to Melzer's field. And Mr. Melzer never said a word to anyone as long as we played ball, did it right, and didn't go swimming in his beach. We could also go over to Milligan's Grove, the Evangelist Field, or Rainey's Field at the Tewksbury line, and play there. Or we go down to Thompson's Grove, which was the best ball field around. Natural ballpark surrounded by pines with a left field fence. It was a great place to play ball. Or we could go up to Pop Nielsen's Field, where the town hall sits today, and play a game there. And we had one kid playing with us. His name was Franny Paradise. And he was the only person who could hit the ball over the left field fence, which is the row of rocks that the cars back up to now. Franny went to Keith Academy, was all scholastic baseball player. He went on to Rensselaer and was an All-America hockey player. And he learned it all up the lake playing. From there, if we could go to another ball field, down to the Common. And then on the Common, there were two fields. One was a regular diamond, well used, and the short end of the field was a small diamond, but it's only about 60 degrees, so that you was restricted, not like this here, you were restricted to an area about that size, but it was well used. I didn't mention Maroon Field, and that was on Cottage Street, only because couldn't get there, that the bigger guys, the really big guys, would throw us out. On the times we were just hanging around doing nothing, someone would say, let's go down to Town Park and play ball. Okay, grab whatever equipment we had and walk down the tracks, play until we were pooped, then walk back up and go for a swim. If you go on the railroad tracks today, there's 4 cruisers out there, and you make the crime lab in the town crier. One of the things about these ball fields is that they were in use 30 or 40 years before we got there. The base parts weren't base parts, they were ruts. Ruts up first, ruts down to second, and ruts from third to home. The pitcher's mound wasn't a mound, it was a 6-inch depression, and on rainy days it filled with water. Home plate, the batter's box, was deeper. And when that filled with water, you're in trouble, but you played on. The games that we played at these fields, we may not have a full team. If we had 10 players, that was 2 teams with a lot of restrictions, like foul balls or outs. But the game we mostly played was scrub. And if anyone knows scrub, scrub is the absolute pecking order. The big kids get up to bat and batted and batted and batted, while all the rest of us, all the other little kids, had to chase the ball and go down. And the only exception was when the big guys would hit a fly ball, a little kid would catch it and come running in, get up to bat, and the big kid in the pecking order would be out in center field somewhere, wanting to catch everything that was hit. Another game we played was Rosie's at the bat, when you only had 3 kids. You hit the ball, hit to the outfield, the guy had to catch it, and then roll it in and try and hit the bat. If it hit the bat, you were up. But if you hit the bat and bounced over and you caught it, you stayed up. And what was the, another thing with all the kids, each age group played their own games. We played half ball, which is stick ball, cork ball, and our local game was rubbers. No matter where it was, we played hard and played all the time. And there was no adult around to tell you how to play ball, how to hit the ball. For instance, if you were playing scrub and they said right field was out, it means if you hit the ball to right field, you're out. So you had to pull the ball, because you didn't want to be out. So you learned how to, on your own, with some big kid telling you, don't make an out. And I think it worked out well. There were no whistles, and the kids playing together learned an awful lot. The pecking order was there, very firm. And of note, equipment. We may have had 2 or 3 gloves, or maybe 4, maybe 5. We had 1 bat and 1 ball. The bat was usually chipped on the barrel, and the handle was cracked, but it was taped with black friction tape, which became a pretty heavy bat. And the ball that we used didn't have a cover. The cover was long gone, and so that was also taped with friction tape. And only a skilled person could do it right and do it so that it worked. Billy Fabiano could do it. But now you had a heavy mass of black, deadly thing that it would hit the broken bat and it would sting. And it was also, it was now lemon-shaped. It wasn't a round baseball. In ending, I think today as I go around the town, all of these ball fields that I played in are all gone. There's a development that sits on top of them. Thompson's Grove, St. Dorothy's, Nielsen's is the town hall. The common is not used for playing ball. Grass is cut, but it's not used for playing ball. And there are no kids on the field. After the final whistle blows for the end of Little League and Senior League, the kids don't use the fields anymore. And I think it's missing. I think the pecking order is essential for all the kids to learn the game. All right, thank you. Next batter is Tighe.
Nice job, Gerry.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Gerry and Tina and all of you that were responsible for this evening. And I just want to start off by saying when Gerry was talking about that home run, that's one more than I hit in my career. So I came to Wilmington in 1940 at the age of 7. I moved here from Roxbury. So this was scary coming up here, believe me. This was real scary. This was real country in those days. We had they organized three gentlemen named Joe Mooney, Sam Ethier, and George Thompson organized a boosters baseball league for us. This was long before Little League. And we used to play most of our games on the Common or, as was mentioned before, at Thompson's Grove, which is where St. Dorothy's Church is. And there were teams from North Wilmington, Silver Lake, South Wilmington, West Wilmington. And we played there for several years. And every once in a while we'd go down to the town park, and that was really a big deal. But mostly it was Common and Thompson's Grove. In '48, I went into the high school and had the honor of sitting on the bench as a freshman when the football team was undefeated, and they were very good. And I do remember being picked on by the seniors and cleaning the bus and things like that. But they were very good, and they beat Tewksbury 56-0, and they only had one game that they had a touchdown scored on them. So they only had 7 points scored on them in the whole year. They were really outstanding. It was a pleasure being part of that, even though I did not participate that much. After the '48 season, the coach, DeTesso, left, and he went to Stoneham to coach down there, and we had, the next 3 years, we had two coaches named Ed Palmieri and Connie O'Doherty, and I think that the talent graduated because we seemed to get progressively worse. We did do okay in baseball. We were able to win a championship, but we used to walk down the town park for practice. We used to practice a lot on the common, but it was not unusual to walk down the town park, practice football, practice baseball, and walk back. I don't think they do that too much now. I also used to, as a young boy, there was a, after the war, Second World War that is, there was a town team, and some of the people here played, it was Leo Woods, Joe Woods, Leo O'Connell, some of these names, Boo Boo Shepherd, Bucky Backman, Larry Cushing, and it was just wonderful to go down there and watch them all play down the town park. It was great. After that era, baseball kind of died for a while, and then it made a comeback in the 60s. And there was some talent there that was unbelievable. This was a town team we had. It was called the Tradesmen, and Jimmy Melzer played on it. He was outstanding. There was Jimmy Gillis, Mike Farrell, Peter Emery. They were great players, all Wilmington boys. But the best thing about the team was we had tremendous pitching, absolutely tremendous pitching. We had Ricky Frotton, who played and signed and played 3 years in the Red Sox system. We had Jeff Williamson, who happens to be here tonight, who signed and played in the Baltimore Orioles system for 3 years. And we had Kevin Fields that played football and baseball at Wilmington High School and went to Northeastern and pitched there and actually played in the College World Series. And Kevin Fields drove every coach, including me, absolutely crazy, and that's why I have all this white hair. But Kevin, white hair is better than no hair. So that was about it. It was absolutely wonderful growing up in Wilmington, and I enjoyed these guys. They were really, really good. From sitting on the bench with the 48 undefeated team to being fortunate enough to be involved with these outstanding baseball players. And now I'd like to introduce Ann Butters, who's going to say a few words. Thank you.
I hate to admit it, but I graduated from Wilmington High in 1935. And when I graduated, there was nothing behind the high school but woods. We used to ski after school in the wintertime. There was no powder house circle, nothing but woods, completely surrounded. The Catholic Church was in the area where the library is here. The center school was where the parking lot is, which there was no need for a parking lot in those days. Nobody had a car. And most of our games, when I was in school, the athletic sports consisted of about 3 competitive sports for girls: field hockey, baseball, and basketball. And for the whole 4 years, there was nothing else to divert anybody to another sport, so those were the 3 sports we played, and everybody played the same in the same sports, and we were just unbeatable. There was nobody that could beat us. Especially in field hockey. Competitives our games were played with just local communities because transportation wasn't that great. Another non-school activity was Rotary Park. At that time was the Cranberry Bog, and in the winter it was flooded so that the whole town of Wilmington could go skating there. It was a great area. The American Legion Hall, we used to hold functions in the American Legion Hall when I was in school, which is now extinct, and that was located opposite the now Catholic Church, which is on the corner of Adams and Middlesex Avenue. And our senior prom was held in the Grange Hall, which was now extinct and was behind Nichols Funeral Home. That's about it. There wasn't too much other than just the 3 sports that we did, and we were great. The whole 4 years we were there, we were just unbeatable. Nobody could beat us in any one of the sports. That's it. Now I'll introduce Sarah Stewart.
I was a little bit afraid in putting this all together following Ann because she was way before me, and I didn't know how much she was going to be covering. But what I sort of planned to talk about was I had looked at when Gerry gave me the assignment of asking me to speak. I said, what am I going to talk about, you know? So then I got to thinking that, well, the best thing to do is compare what we had as athletes versus what they have either today or in the last 4 or 5 years. And so what I'd like to do is just, it's impossible to compare the sports in 45 and up to 48 with the sports of today because of the growth in the town. When I moved to Wilmington in 1945, there was 3,200 people in town. I think right now there's something like 32,000. So you can just see what the population swing would do. And at that time in 45, there was roughly 400 full students in that little building that they call the Swain School now, was the high school. And of what there was about 100 of us were boys, there was about 140 girls. So the boys made up most of the athletics, which consisted of basketball, football, and baseball, just those 3 sports. The girls had, well, as far as I knew, they only had 2 sports. One was field hockey, the other was softball, and then, of course, there was always the cheerleaders that we had to have. The population growth in the town really was so great that, you know, as the schools got bigger, we had to buy more schools and all that. But also the athletic department grew just exponential. So consequently, we had all kinds of coaches. We always had in the 45 to 48 series, well, 45 and 46, the boys' sports was coached by one fella, Harold Driscoll. Now, a lot of you here will probably know him as Ding Driscoll. But any player, you wouldn't say that to his face. You would say, Mr. Driscoll. You would regret and the girls had, well, as far as I knew at that time, they only had one coach, Miss Greenwood. And she also coached all 3 sports, as well as Driscoll did. He coached all football, baseball, and basketball. But then in 46 and 47, we had 3 coaches come. I guess it took 3 to replace Mr. Driscoll. And they were Tony DeTesso and Joe Donovan and Ralph Ambrose. Now, the 3 of them always coached together. So at football, we had those 3. Baseball, we had those 3. And at basketball, we had those 3. Now, in football, of course, it's interesting to look at some of the pictures here because I had figured that there was only about 30 guys on the football team, and just counting the pitcher, I saw there were 42. But as Tighe said, a lot of those guys just sat on the bench. There was about 22 of us that played the games, and there was about, I'd say maybe 11 of us that played the whole game. We played defense, we played offense, and there was no such thing as you had enough players to play one on offense and one on defense. And so we all played every position, any position. It was almost a matter of what you were. My position was always fullback, but on long centers for point after, I was the center. And then on backfield, on defense, I was a center backfield man. So you never knew till when the ball changed hands where you went. So there was nothing like today. when we had just the one coach and then the three coaches. And the other thing I wanted to sort of compare it with is for today's coaches. I think and I'm just sort of guessing at some of these things, but if I remember going to some of the games, the football team alone has about 10, between managers and people of trainers and things, psychologists and muscle builders and all that. There must be at least 10 or 12 of them there. And we had one guy, just one. And at the end, we had three guys. So you can't really compare those teams with our team. And a lot of people have asked me, well, do you think the 48 team could beat the new kids? I don't think we could have beat the 49ers. I mean, there was a case where once things start growing, they just keep growing. The baseball has been mentioned, and of course, one of the things I was going to talk about was the baseball in the fields that we practiced on. I'll go back. We practiced football on the town common too, and then we practiced baseball in the town common. So it was really not very far to get to the town common, but every once in a while they would want to take us to the town park. And today they would hire a bus and drive you down there. They say, we'll meet you down there at 3:15 or 3:30, and you either walk down there, or if you had somebody that could drive you down there, that was great too. But usually it was walking. We walked to the town park. So, and then for basketball, I'm sure you're all aware, well, you should be. If you're not, go look at the basketball court that we played in the Swain School. I think it was about 40 feet by about 60 feet. And the ceiling, now the basket is supposed to be at 10 feet. I think the ceiling was 11 foot. So the only way you could put a ball in the basket was to shoot a line drive. So we used to scrimmage most of the time. We always had somebody to scrimmage. But then to get to those scrimmages, we had to have somebody with cars that would drive us to Tewksbury, to Drake, to Billerica. So we did most of our, you might say, practicing during games. And I was reading just recently about, we even won 4 games one year. The other years, I don't know what we won, and I'm glad they never recorded any of them. So, the other thing I was going to talk about is the equipment that we had. And when we played, and the old joke is, you had leather helmets. And that's exactly what we had, was leather helmets, made out of leather. No face guard, just a leather helmet. And the pads, the shoulder pads and the pants and everything, I think were used by the 1937 team. And we were, on game days, we were issued a game jersey. But as soon as the game was over, you take it home, have your mother wash it, bring it back on Monday morning, and they'll store it away for the week. So, and another thing that we always had was the baseball. We had baseball uniforms, which was unheard of, I guess, until about 1945. And there was a case where you had to bring all your own practice uniforms and your own gloves and your own cleats and everything. And of course, I was a catcher, so I always had to have a catcher's mitt. But in looking at some of the pictures, the catcher's mitt compared to today is about 8 inches or 10 inches wide, is about 3 or 4 inches thick. And there's a little tiny pocket that you hope to catch it in. But then, being a small school, all the players, it seemed like all the guys that played football, played baseball, played basketball. So you'd never go to practice that you didn't know everybody in the whole team, and you knew exactly what position they played and if they were going to play. So it was a case where I put down that we were sort of like a family, because we played well enough that football, for instance, we had a basic set of plays, and the coaches could have gone home because we never listened to them. Billy Chisholm, who was the quarterback, would call the plays, and the rest of us would just go ahead and do it. And the coaches said, "What are you doing that for?" Well, we thought we could do it. And that's where Tony DiTesso lucked out, because we were such a good team in '48 that he got a nice job in Stoneham. Then he went to Melrose, and he became the athletic director at Melrose. It was all because of the '48 team. And the '48 team, somebody had mentioned we had scored, well, they said it was 206 points to 6. And we beat everybody that we played. Now, we wouldn't have beat, I think it was a team that was down south, near the South Shore, but the field goal, with the uprights in the bar, had a big sway in it. And they missed the field goal, so it would have been 7. But we so thoroughly enjoy the play, and in fact, some of us still get together every once in a while and have lunch together and things like that. And I've had lunch with Tony DiTesso about a year ago. And he lives in Stoneham now, retired, and is very happy. Thank you. Frank Kelley is the next speaker.
I thought I'd like to go back to Gerry's talk, and it reminded me so much when I was growing up and when we were playing baseball. But he detailed his first home run. I played on a lot of baseball fields, and whenever I hit a home run, which was seldom, everybody said, "We have to move to a bigger field." That's the truth. So we played about 4 different fields, and they always was bigger than the one before. But Gerry came over my house a couple of weeks ago and told me what we were going to have, a history of sports in Wilmington. He asked me if I do track, and I said definitely I would. And it happened, I think, the second day I was teaching at Wilmington. I was out watching the football team. It was the fall of 1957. I was approached by a gentleman by the name of Larry Cushing. He was the athletic director, of course. His first greeting was, "I hear that you've had experience coaching track. And how would you like to start a track program in the spring?" Being the shy type, of course, I said, "How about letting me start a cross-country team now?" He said, "Let's see how track works out first. Let's see the spring, if it works out." And it did. Our first meet in the spring was against Bedford. We were clobbered, but 3 of Joe Gilligan's baseball players were watching our game, our meet, Miss Sports. We're watching the meet, and they thought it looked like a little fun, and asked Joe if it would be possible to switch to track. They did. We ran Bedford again later on that year, and reversed the club, because the 3 people that Joe sent over were the mainstay of our team after that. But the following fall, we started cross-country. Our first meet, we ran Woburn. Again, we were clobbered, this time being shut out 15-50. Low score wins in cross-country for those who just played softball, baseball, basketball, and football. I had to explain that to them. But that first meet was memorable because it was in a downpour, in a thunderstorm. There was a little lightning, little thunder, and it was the initiation of the cross-country program at Wilmington High School. Water pouring down on our heads, we knew that cross-country, at least, was a clean sport. I had to think of that one. It was interesting. Following year, we ran Woburn again. This time it was a lot closer. And we had an enjoyable few years running back and forth to Woburn. Winter track began many years later on. We won't call it indoor track because most of the training was done outdoors, the middle distance and the distance, as well as the shot put was done outdoors. Often the shot disappeared in the snowbank and did not make its reappearance until the snow melted in the spring. We found about 4 shots. I'd have to go over and see our athletic director and say, I need another shot. What happened? We can't find it. It was in the snowbank. And shoveling wouldn't find it. But we managed to get a lot of shots after the weather got warm. The winter track program was rather informal. It was in the high school corridors. We invented some novel inter-squad competition. We'd have the one-lap run. We'd run down the long hall by the office, take a left, go down to the end of the wing, climb up the stairs, come down the upstairs wing, down by the office, and then down by my classroom. That would be the one lap. It was about a quarter mile. So we'd have the 2-lap run, we'd have the 5-lap run. That's your distance runners would do that. We also had the 1-minute run. I'd say go, and the sprinters would start out, run for a minute, would blow the whistle, they'd all stop where they were, and we'd figure who was first, who was second, who was third, fourth, fifth, how many points you got. Well, we got 8 points for first place, 5 points for second, 3 points for third, 4 points, no, 2 comes next. 2 points for second, and so forth. Have I run over, Gerry? Okay, sorry. Okay, not yet. All right. We would throw the shot in the cafeteria. And one day, when I had John Fairfield on my team, he put a hole in the ceiling. John was a big guy. And one of the custodians said, "You can't throw it in here anymore." I said, "Yes, we can." And we did. We'd go to some of the major meets in Boston with not having competed in a regular track meet. And the kids would score every once in a while in those major meets. I got a call one day from Ernie Perry, who was coach at Lawrence at the time. He said, "There's an opening for a track team for the Winter Essex County League. And are you interested?" I spoke to Larry. We started winter track. Now, the girls' cross-country team began in '74. 2 girls claiming to hate field hockey asked to join. Sorry about that. But we had the largest boys' team in our history that year. We had 79 kids. But we had 2 girls and 79 boys. Gradually, the girls' numbers increased through the mid-'80s until soccer, with a cast of thousands in the Wilmington Youth Program, they drained away much of our talent in cross-country. Winter track began in much the same way as the cross-country did. First, a few who would run as JVs with boys, and then a few more as the ladies dared to brave the elements of winter track. I remember one girl, a very excellent athlete, I found out. First day we had winter track practice, I sent the girls out on a run, a couple of miles. They came in soaked. It was pouring out. I was inside, so I didn't notice. And they came in, and the next day, a couple of them didn't show up. They went to the basketball team. It was dry in basketball. Now, Act 3, Scene 1. The scenario is the same, but the plot thickens as we get many really fine athletes joining the teams. I've said too many coaches who have not had the benefit of coaching female track athletes. If you get a loyal girl on your team, she will run right through the wall for you. They are tough. The 80s, again, marked the high point of the early girls program. They were very competitive and handled themselves well in regional and statewide competition. Track is a numbers game. You need a lot of kids. When Wilmington had the numbers, their stars shone brightly in the competitive scene. When numbers dwindled, the stars lost their luster. Thank you. Who's going up? Joe Gilligan. You won't read this.
Maybe not. Not today. Maybe another day. I do have a prepared statement. However, I would like to make a few comments on previous speakers. Not to put them down. I think I'll put on my glasses so I know what I'm saying. When Gerry was talking about the different fields, he mentioned in particular big ruts. And I thought he was talking about the town park when I played there, because that's exactly what it was, big ruts filled with rain. Ann mentioned 3 sports that the girls played. Well, we lost one somewhere because when I was in high school, they only had 2. Arthur spoke about leather helmets. For me, a leather helmet was no problem because, according to Ding Driscoll, I was a cement head. Arthur recalled the cellar at the Swain School, and he said the baskets were 10 feet and the ceilings 11. Wrong. The ceilings were 12. Oh, yes, and Frank said that I gave him 3 track men. Well, I didn't exactly give them to him. However, they weren't very good baseball players. Thank you, Gerry. Thank you, Tina, Carol, and WCTV. It's certainly a pleasure to be here. Can't you tell? I played 4 years of baseball and 3 years of basketball at Wilmington High School, which is now the Swain School. I did not play varsity football as a senior for 2 reasons. One was that I had hurt my knee playing baseball the end of my junior year, and I had to have an operation. I had a cartilage removed. Talk about things being different then and now. By the time September came around, I still wasn't cured, so I couldn't play football. The second reason I didn't play was I wasn't very good anyway. I might have weighed 120 or 130 pounds when I was in high school. It wasn't unusual weight at that time. It's a little unusual now. And that's just a part of what we're talking about, and that is how things are different today than they were a number of years ago, like 50 years. When I was in high school, the boys had the option of competing in 3 sports, football, baseball, basketball, as Arthur mentioned,
And the girls had two sports, basketball and field hockey. We practiced basketball in the cellar. It had a cement floor, incidentally, so you didn't want to fall down if you could avoid it. None of us were great shooters, not even good shooters. The boys practiced 3 days a week, and the girls 2. That is to say, practiced. We were not very good. I think Arthur pointed that out. There was no three-point shot. Everything was two-handed set shots. There was no one-handed jump shot. And we shot free throws between your legs. As a rule, you were either right-handed or you were left-handed. If you dribbled the ball, you dribbled it with your right hand, or you dribbled it with your left hand. Nobody did this. When I was a senior, the Tewksbury High School coach allowed us to practice basketball at Tewksbury's court after their team had done their practice. And how we got there was any way we could. There were no buses, very few cars, and we'd start our practice like 5 or 5:30 in the evening. And the irony is that we beat them one game. As a matter of fact, we won 3 games altogether. We won a game 22-20 and 19-18. Did I say we weren't very good shoots? We had no home games, of course, but we played on some varying surfaces. We played at Billerica on the stage of an auditorium. That was thrilling, unless you got close to the sidelines. At North Andover, their basketball court was about the size of this room. The ceiling was a little higher, but it was much like our own. And if you were taking the ball out on the side, you probably were sitting on somebody's lap. We also scrimmaged Central Catholic at Lawrence Lawrence Armory. And that was about 1 mile long and about 600 yards wide. We were absolutely exhausted before the first period ended. The girls' basketball game at that time was played 6 to a side, 3 guards and 3 forwards. The forwards were allowed to shoot the ball. The guards guarded. They were allowed 1 dribble, 1 bounce, you may recall. There were no JV or freshman teams, so when we played basketball games, the girls played the first game and the boys played the second game. We traveled by bus, fortunately, all together. Of course, we played the same schools on the same nights. We were members of the Lowell Suburban League, which included Tewksbury, Billerica, Chelmsford, Burlington, Dracut. We also played games against Punchard High School. You all remember Punchard. They call themselves Andover these days. We played against Johnson High School, now called North Andover. And from time to time we played Tenney High School. Now they are known as Methuen. I did play baseball, and practice was on the common, as Arthur stated. Home plate was in the corner by School Street. At times we practiced at the town park, as Arthur did. traveled by any means at all. We had the same coach, Harold Ding Driscoll, for all sports, used the same baseball glove, which we threw back onto the field when we were finished an inning. We used wood bats. There were no helmets. In 1947, our baseball team won the Lowell Suburban League championship. My unclear remembrance is that we were undefeated. I could be wrong. What I do recall is that the Rotary Club had a luncheon in our honor, and we were presented jackets, which was highly unusual. The general reward for sports was a letter about 10 inches high, which you could sew or have sewn on an apparel of your choosing. I think I still have one, not the apparel. Exception, the 1946 football team, that was the class of 47, were issued sweaters with a nice W right on the front. There's an old adage that says, the older I get, the better I was. It's just not true. The high school athletes of my time, with very few exceptions, couldn't match the skills of today's competitors and the environment in which they play. Today's high school athletes are unquestionably bigger, stronger, and likely, for the most part, better. Things change, and they have. I'd like to introduce one of the best football players to ever play at Wilmington High School. He went on to play at Wyoming, and while at Wyoming played in the Sugar Bowl and played in the Sun Bowl. A great accomplishment and a great person, and he's Jack Bowen.
Well, good evening. I'm Jack Bowen, and I'm very proud and honored to be invited here tonight. Before I do start with what I'd like to speak about, or what I prepared to speak of, listening to Stretch and Arthur, it seems that we all played on the same fields. You know, so it'd be a little redundant what I'm going to talk about, but it just shows you how the town did grow and didn't at times. You know, until the fields changed, we played. As Mr. Gilligan mentioned about the gymnasium over at the Swain School. Well, by the time I hit school, we were much more refined. Because when I hit the gymnasium, I think the Mildred Rogers had grown so, I was up at the lake, they moved 5th and 6th grade down to the Swain School, which was instilling with the high school kids. We had ballroom dancing in the gym. But we did have a great deal of fun, but it was very interesting listening about the height of the ceiling change, and it was a very low ceiling. But tonight, I'd like to talk about growing up as a lake kid. This gave me an opportunity to go sledding, skating, fishing, swimming, enjoy all types of sandlot ball games that you can imagine in places like Pops Hill, Silver Lake, Thompson's Groves, Nielsen's Grove, and Mr. Eaton's Field. Now, where are those places today? You've heard about them. It's St. Dorothy's Church, the town hall. Pops Hill is on Glen Road, right across from the town hall. We used to coast down that hill. The town would close it and would slide down there all winter long. But the neighborhood kids would choose sides and would keep competition and fairness in mind. Our games didn't need coaches, soccer mums, or hockey dads. We made and enforced our own rules with the help of older brothers and sisters. When do you see the kids swimming at Silver Lake today, or skating on Silver Lake, or playing a sandlot ball game? It just doesn't happen. I think maybe we've just starting to swing the other way a bit, where there's too much parental involvement. Unfortunately, today's kids don't know what they're missing. American Heart Association says that 11 million children today are overweight. 13 million are at risk of becoming overweight. So please, I encourage you to send your kids out to play in the afternoon. Leave the computers alone, leave the cell phones alone, get away from the television. In junior high, I met Coach Joe Beaton, my first official coach. Each afternoon, Coach Beaton would condition us, he'd teach us to block, tackle, carry the ball, and then we'd scrimmage. Our equipment was high school hand-me-downs. Our football pants had what appeared to be sewn-in quilted pot holders for thigh pads and knee pads. Our shoulder pads, one size fit all. We played with those same leather helmets without face masks. Coach Beaton must have gone home every afternoon and had a good laugh. But he was always encouraging, made us feel that we were improving each day. As freshmen, we were brought up to the varsity. We met Coach Fred Bellissimo. He was a hard-nosed, in-your-face guy, the most direct person I ever met. That's not to say that he didn't have a sense of humor and wasn't a fun guy to be around. But when it came to football, he was Physical Fred that we all knew and we loved. He conditioned us to a point where we knew that no team would outrun us, out-hit us, or out-tough us. And he didn't do this alone. He did it with two of the best assistant coaches in Dick Cady and John Ritchie. Coach Frank Kelley, our soft-spoken track coach, was the complete opposite of Coach Bellissimo. We worked hard and we tried always to do our best so that we didn't disappoint Coach Kelley. We knew all the hard work that he was doing, preparing us physically and giving us the latest techniques on our running events and our field events. And it didn't matter whether you were a freshman or a senior. He always knew what your personal best was. My classmates who played for Coach Gilligan felt the same way about him. He was always fair, knew more about baseball than anybody else, and they felt lucky to be coached by him. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a couple of Wilmington High School staff members. Mr. Vinnie Gallucci, my guidance counselor. Miss Mary Bootlier, the head of the reading department. Without their efforts and support, it would have made it very difficult for me to achieve my dream of becoming a teacher and a coach. Through athletics in Wilmington High School, we learned to deal with success and adversity. We learned to work together, to support and encourage one another through teamwork. There was no shortcuts to success, either on the athletic field or in the classroom. We developed a healthy sense of self-confidence in who we were as young men and young women. Now, this is where I was supposed to introduce John Ritchie, but John isn't here. But I would like to tell you a little bit more about John Ritchie. John Ritchie was very instrumental in having the head football coach of the University of Wyoming, Lloyd Eaton, come to my house to meet my parents and offer me a full four-year athletic scholarship. That was awesome. Unbelievable. But John did one better. My sophomore year, I was redshirted. I was so disappointed. I called my dad and said, I think I'm going to leave. An hour later, I got a call from John Ritchie explaining to me the benefits of an extra year of eligibility. He told me to make the best of it and work hard, and things would work out for the best. And boy, John, you were right. Thank you very much. Kevin Fields, please. Next speaker, I'm sorry. One of the best ends and baseball player Wilmington has ever had.
What a guy. Here's the $10. Thank you. After I'm done speaking, we're going to open up any questions or comments that you might have just in general, or if you want to ask specifically any of the athletes that have spoken, you're more than welcome to do that. And there's a microphone here, and I'll come up and bring it to you. Being the last speaker, I would just like to perhaps focus on two things. One of them is the tradition of Wilmington athletes and some comments as well about some of the people that are in this room. This is a small town, as you well know. It has grown, but we have an amazing tradition of outstanding teams and outstanding coaches, and that's been through the years. I mean, through the 40s, 50s, all the way right now, and the success that Gerry mentioned of the current teams. And one of the things that I took out of this tradition and, you know, out of being an athlete was the relationships that I developed amongst people. I think that's probably the most important thing. I mean, you play to win and you play, you know, competitively and so forth, but what you get out of it, what I got out of it was the relationships that I developed, not only with, you know, the athletes that I played with, but with the coaches as well. I played 46 years ago, and I still, to this day, have relationships with the coaches and some of the, you know, the athletes that I played with. You grow up and you hear names like Gerry O'Reilly. I remember watching Gerry at the town park when I was a little kid and watching him punt. I don't know if he even remembers this, but he used to punt the ball 60 or 70 yards. And I stored that in my mind, and when I started playing football, I said, you know what I want to do when I get to Wilmington High School? I want to punt. And I did. You hear names, you know, like Arthur Spear, and, you know, these names mean something to you. And especially the thing I like to see is the advancement of the women in sports. That is such an achievement to see girls now playing sports and playing so well. And, you know, Joan Cushing and Ann Butters, representative, I'm so glad that they're here this evening. And it might be a little payback time for some of the coaches and teachers that I had that are here tonight. They're pretty smart up here, some of them, but John Ritchie is not here. John was my Little League coach for the Detroit Tigers when we used to play on the Common, and of course then he was my football coach for 3 years. Jay Tighe is here, and I played for Jay on a semi-pro baseball team. We had a great time together, and Jay taught me that when you get on the field, it's baseball. We used to have a lot of fun afterwards, but when you got on the field, it was all business. Mr. Kelley, I never went out for track, but one small story that he can verify, one day as I was out at football practice, I was just out there early, which is a miracle, but I was out there and he said to me, why don't you run, it was cross country, obviously. I said, I'd like to try the cross country course. And he said, well, yeah, I'll show you where it is, you know. Well, in my uniform, I ran the cross country course. You know what happened? I got lost. I couldn't find my way back. But when I did get back, bellissimo, I won't tell you what he did or said. But I told him Mr. Kelley said it was okay. I won't tell you what he said about that, too. But poor Mr. Kelley had to put up with me in algebra. You know, he walked in the room and he said something about a hypotenuse. And I said, oh, yeah, that's an animal down the Stoneham Zoo, hypotenuse. And needless to say, I didn't do well in the class, but he still was a great teacher. And speaking of great teachers and coaches, he's sitting right in front of me now, my science teacher, who I used to drive really crazy. But he was so patient with me, as well as on the baseball field, and that, of course, is Joe Gilligan, who to this day I still have a great friendship. And that's the amazing thing about playing sports, is that whether it's a teammate with Jackie Bowen, who was, as somebody introduced him, said one of the greatest players in Wilmington, he was. And the idea of tradition is amazing when you think of the athletes that have come out of Wilmington High School and have met with such success, whether it's Jackie at Wyoming or Mike Esposito, you know, at Boston colleges. Boston College, the Gillises, kind of owning football in Springfield. And then you go down all the list of all the names of everybody, and I hate mentioning names because you always, leave somebody out, whether it's the Woods or the Stewarts or the Williamsons or the Frottons. I mean, all these names of some of the tremendous athletes, that have come through Wilmington High School, it's really just amazing. So in closing, I'd just like to say that even though sports, has drastically changed since the 60s with the modern equipment, the organization, the better conditioning, the advancement of women's sports, I hope one thing never changes, and that is coaches who don't just want to win, but who sincerely care about the athletes as persons with individual needs. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to have a little quiz show here. Anybody that would like to ask a question to any, shut up, Jeff. Any of the people that would like to ask a question or, make a comment? You would? Yes, right down here.
Seeing that John Ritchie isn't here, I had a couple of things I was going to say about him, but then I crossed him out because I've said it 3 or 4 times to him, and he's always gotten mad at me. But I was going to try once more. He was a coach of basketball in 1947 because Mr. Driscoll got sick and couldn't coach, so John Ritchie took over the team. And every time I tell the audience that he was my coach, he shudders.
Thank you. Jeff, did you really want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to tell a story about when you threw your ball out the window.
No, that's okay. And I did not run off the mound when there was a fire and go to the firehouse either. That's completely untrue.
And wait a second, there's more to it.
No, there isn't.
You told Mr. Gilligan, you told Mr. Gilligan to stop the bus and he threw his glove out the window, and he said, that's all you kept me open to.
Kevin, I was wondering if you could just spend a moment telling everyone how we had the suicide squeeze on one day in the semi-pro league, and you were at bat, and we put the suicide squeeze on. Maybe you could.
I don't remember. You're going to have to tell me.
Well, you missed the ball as the runner was coming home.
Right.
So you decided to tackle a catcher.
Really? Wow. I don't remember that.
Seeing that Kevin is fair game right now. One time, like probably 53 or 54, Little League was playing on the Common, and I was over there with his mother. And she knew me from high school, and she's very friendly with me, and as I was friendly with Kevin's older brother. And the game, Wes Baker was the umpire. And the game was going on, and something happened. It was a bad call. Kevin is on the mound, walks into the catcher, and yells and screams at him. He says, "Give me that ball or else." And Wes Baker's there, standing like him. Kevin turns around, walks out to the mound. Mrs. Fields says to me, says, "I'm going to hide behind you."
Wow. She did a lot of hiding. Okay, let's change the topic here now. We need to move on. Any other questions or comments about athletics in Wilmington through the ages? Leo? This is Leo Woodside.
Thank you. I'd like to know about the alumni games that the football team used to play.
Leo asked me a question that I wasn't aware of, but maybe somebody here can answer that. I understand that probably it wasn't in the 60s, so it was either in the 40s or 50s, that the alumni used to play the football team. Anybody want to just talk about that for a second?
I think it was only 1 year. No. It was 5 years? Well, I only know of one.
1 year, 5 year? Gerry, do you want to? I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, it was a regular scheduled game. I think it was, first one was in 49. 49, 50, 51, 52, and Mickey Rooney was the last year. He was playing when that was last year, so that was 55, and they ended after that. But it was always a rumor that Joe Kelley, who played for the alumni, had whiskey in the water bucket. And I think it was true. And the game, and the games are down in Town Park, and they were exciting. You know, everyone got to play. All the alumni who thought they still had it got creamed, and because the young kids were just too strong for a guy who was just 2 or 3 years out of high school, couldn't keep up with the kids because the kids had more going for them. Right? And, they were exciting. They were billed part of the program. They were written up in the paper. There was a program for the game, and everyone showed up. And George Spanos was there, and he worked both sides, doing the alumni side and doing the high school side.
Very good. Yes, Tina?
Well, when Gerry came to my office to talk about this program, one of the comments he made is that during the 40s there was the war, World War II going on, and it had some impact on sports. And I was wondering if any of the speakers can comment on, did they lose some players, and did it impact how the games went?
Actually, Hank Stewart was going to be part of this program tonight, but he was going away, and he has some comments in his article that Gerry might want to take a look at and say something about that. But I guess maybe Joe Gilligan can, because he's certainly old enough. He'd remember that. See.
I'm old enough to be sitting here taking all this in and believing only half of it. There was, at the high school, I wasn't there, I was much too young. At the high school, they did have close order drill and what have you in the so-called gym for phys ed classes. As a matter of fact, they had conditioning and anything that you might run into as a service person.
Thank you. Anybody else question or a comment? Yes. Pass that along.
As a member of the girls' basketball team in Wilmington in 45, 46, no, it wasn't 46, 45, I believe. We used to go downstairs, well, down to the gym and to practice, and which is where we also ate lunch, which we also had assembly. Well, one time we got there before the coach, and we wanted to practice, but somebody had left the piano out, the old-fashioned upright piano. So I said to the girls, come on, let's move it in behind where it's supposed to go. So we all started pushing it, and one of the runners were off of it, and it fell over on top of me and knocked me unconscious. Now tell me, boys, did you ever do anything like that? So I am well noted for that. In my class book, they said, what is your ambition? Move more pianos. So Mr. Driscoll and Mr. Bean, I guess Mr. Bean took me to the hospital, but that was okay. Wow. I didn't break anything.
That into your career, though.
Yes, the end of my career, and that's my sister talking.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to turn the program back to Tina Stewart.
I actually have the speech from Hank Stewart, and I'm going to read it because it does answer the question that I just asked about World War II. Wilmington Sports, 1941 to 1945. Everything after December 7, 1941, centered around World War II. At Wilmington, the 1941 football schedule was completed, and after that, all sports were affected in some way or another. After Pearl Harbor on December 8th, a general assembly was called in the high school gym. Stephen Sparky Bean, superintendent of the Wilmington school system, has set up his radio in the high school gym so that the whole school could listen while FDR officially declared war on Japan and Germany. After the declaration, Mr. Bean got up in front of the assembly and in tears said, "What a sad day this is, but we have to fight a war." We really didn't understand what he was saying, but years later, I understand. The other thing at this time was the draft was already in effect with the minimum age of 21. The minimum age was changed to 18 in November of 1942. This meant that boys of high school age could now be drafted. The rules were modified so that the boys who turned 18 before they enter their senior year of high school, September 1st, was used as the cutoff date, were drafted without starting their senior year, and those who turned 18 between September 1st and December 31st were drafted after January 1 of the following year. Those who turned 18 after January 1 were drafted right after their birthday. Those who didn't wanted to go into the Army to beat the system by voluntarily enlisting in some other branch of the service before they turned 18. Navy, Marines, Army Air Corps, or Coast Guard. This required a parent's signature. This and some other factors led to canceling basketball in the 1940 to 1943 and baseball in 1943. Some of the other towns around canceled their whole sports programs. Burlington was one of them, and I can't remember any others. This led to a scheduling problem, and I remember playing against some teams that we never would normally play. Essex Agricultural School, we played football, Phillips Academy, JVs, baseball, Shirley Reformatory, football, and Lowell High School JVs football, and probably a couple of others that I don't remember. As an aside, the Marines never had to use anything but volunteers until the Korean War, and Joe Gilligan is one of the few people who were ever drafted into the Marines. This had an effect on team sports, particularly basketball and baseball. I have a problem trying to remember the players on any of the teams, and in some cases, the spelling of their names. I've also eliminated the position of each individual, as I also don't remember who played where. But 1941 football, Herbie Higginbottom, Boo Boo Shepherd, Leo Ring, George Pickowitz, and Calvin Drew. That's it. So that was Hank's presentation. Is there any other questions that anyone wants to ask before we have some time to, at least if you came a little later, there's a wonderful collection of pictures that Gerry has here for you to look at, and we'll give you some time to do that and to enjoy refreshments, and certainly to talk to our speakers tonight, who I want to thank again for coming and taking the time to share their memories and their stories with us. Carolyn, do you have something to say?
I would like to personally, and on behalf of the Historical Commission, thank every one of our athletes for coming here. You made history on the fields and on the courts, and you made history tonight because this is being well recorded for posterity. And it will be available, and we'll make sure that each of our athletes tonight receive a copy of the program. You know, I was so happy when Jack and when Kevin mentioned the importance of team sports and what they learned being part of the team from their coaches and from the collaboration working with their team members. But not everyone can be an athlete. So hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands now of students lived vicariously through you, watching you on the field, watching you on the court, watching the track races, and cheering all the way. You know, some of my fondest memories was with hundreds of others going to the games and watching and cheering and coming back to, you know, the caravans of cars and coming back into Wilmington with our shakers of blue and white, yelling and screaming and, you know, hitting the horn as hard as we could. You gave us that pride in Wilmington, so that you wanted to wear the blue and white and you wanted to go to those other towns and say, hey, I'm from Wilmington and we have the best sports of anyone. So I want to thank you all for coming and for sharing your experiences and for being part of this program tonight. And I believe it's the first of several programs we're going to be doing. But it has to be my favorite because I'm the class of '64. With that, I'll turn it over to Gerry for our final word. You have to say a final word. Thank you very much.
I appreciate everyone coming here tonight. I think it's a lot of fun. There's a lot more memories that we have, and as we went through the nights, my mind was just picking right up, and I remembered this, and I remembered that. And like Joe Gilligan was the only person that I knew of who could throw the ball behind this ear with any distance at all. Nobody else could do it. He was the only one. Yeah, he didn't have a bad knee, he had a bad arm. And Joe's speaking about the operation on his knee. Once that happened to you, pretty much all through, that happened to you today, they shoot you over to Leahy, insert a needle, fix the cartilage, pull the needle out and say, okay, you can't start running until 3 days from now, and away you go. And so that's one of the biggest changes, is the on-the-field assistance that athletes get today, which just wasn't available. And another memory I have, that my sophomore year I made the baseball team, and Tony DiTeslo says, okay, we're all going down to Town Park. Beautiful, can't wait to get down there. Get down to Town Park, and we're all handed rakes. We had to rake the field because the Entiles had spread the field with manure the previous fall, and we had to go down and clean it all up. And I said, I'm not learning anything about baseball. And, but it's been an absolute pleasure. And one of my favorite people is here tonight, and I met him in the second grade. I was in the second or third grade. I went down to the Walker School. The dentist was there, and they had there was one kid at the school who dominated the whole school. He was in charge of the whole school, and spent one day trying to catch me. And I just proved it. I was faster than he was. That was Paul Carpenter. and Paul Carpenter, in my mind, and I can still say him, is hit the hardest, ran the hardest, and played the toughest game in his era than anyone else I've ever seen. But I thank you very much.
Thanks again. Please enjoy the refreshments and take some time to look at these great photographs. Thank you.